Ron, could you take the roll call, please?
Koski.
Here.
Hutton. Here. Silver here. Swift.
Here.
Gallops.
Here.
That'll be later.
Hey, okay, and don't pick on the secretary.
Yeah, secretary of defense. It appears.
Okay, we have a quorum. Good. I'll entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second from Karen.
Yeah, because I don't even have the written one, but I sent it to her.
Yeah, so
In the email.
yeah, I don't think I even received the regular
No.
agenda.
None of us did.
Nobody did.
Excuse me.
Dave and I had a conversation.
Yeah.
It's my fault. Dave says I shouldn't take the blame for it, but I sent it in late and I forgot that Thursday and Friday.
It's in there, but it's nothing. I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Ron, second by Billy to approve past minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
No changes, no reason to.
No reason for anything there. Nothing has come out. And nothing has come in
I
yet.
don't know that.
Public comments? Nobody's here tonight for public comment. So we'll go right on that. Came up with a proposal, sent it to Lud, and that's why Lud Works is here tonight to explain if we have to make any changes or.
So I reached out to Stuart. So I then shared that with Attorney Wertz because there was a conversation at the last meeting to get Lud's opinion about it. So we did that. I also took an opportunity to share it with Craig Ripon in the Main Street, just because kind of hand in hand with that. And there's been some discussions regarding that the drafted ordinance and some concerns with it. And we've engaged the state of Wisconsin, who is the kind of Main Street coordinator for historic preservation. We've engaged him to start talking about kind of what ordinances look like, what they can look like, and also what guidelines look like. So Craig and I just felt like this approach, and I don't want to speak for Craig or Main Street, but some of the ordinance as it's drafted is a concern. And when I brought it to Attorney Wertz as well, how it was drafted, there were some concerns. So I just, Sue had shared the ordinance and then bring Lud in to talk about the existing historic preservation ordinance and how this would, as drafted, drastically change things and the ramifications for some of that. So certainly, Lud, you can kind of summarize what you think and have reviewed.
Thank you. So yeah, obviously this being the work, and there were the concept obviously was to suggest that you were going to insert this into the zoning code and then try to, by doing that, make manual guidelines sort of the law, if you will, under ordinances. Is kind of the intent, and that's certainly a thought, but it flies in the face of your responsibilities as historic. Okay, that's certainly within the purview of the Plan Commission, perhaps, and then recommending to the Common Council that this type of change could be made to the zoning code. So then, when you dig back into other way to see the Historic Preservation Commission, and given the fact that I was around when it was created, that clearly was the intent of the language, that this body is a recommending body. Now, a certificate of appropriateness is a big deal and should be seriously considered and have guidelines as to how one evaluates whether or not a certificate of appropriateness should be granted or denied, and that's your role, to grant or deny, meaning pass it on to the council with your recommendation to grant or deny. If you grant, it moves forward. You got 45 days, excuse me. If you do not act initially, you have 45 days to settle. Then ultimately, there's also in the ordinance a 60-day deadline. So if you do nothing with the certificate of appropriateness within 60 days, you're done, okay? So holding a public hearing here or holding a concerns that you're not going to grant a certificate of appropriateness is your duty. That's your responsibility. There is no other responsibility. And ultimately, then the Common Council denies the certificate of appropriateness, and then ultimately they've got an appeal process from there, which is very difficult, and probably to the circuit court. So that's the way it flows. Commission to change the ordinance. You would be stepping way beyond your bounds to suggest that this is how we want to deal with applications for certificate of appropriateness, is that we're already away from the Common Council. Now, politically, you can say that's what you want, but certainly is not within your purview to draft an ordinance. So that's step one in the process, okay? Any questions about that?
I do.
Okay.
Because then we've been doing this all wrong. When we deny one, we've just basically denied the application. And then the next step takes it to,
Yeah.
I thought I understood you saying that we have to take it when we deny it, and we have to have a public hearing and.
No, that's if you don't act. So you
We
either
don't act.
deny,
Okay.
or
So
within
we've been doing it
45
right.
days,
Okay.
you set a public hearing, either in front of this body, for the Common Council, either to say, okay, we understand their reasoning. So the underlying motivation that you have to clean up the guidelines, the downtown guidelines, is perfect. Because that's very clear in the ordinance that you are to deal with those questions. You are to specifically be able to address whether or not there should be a rescission of designation, and ultimately dealing with the architectural significance of the property. All that is clear in here, that you have a duty to deal with it. And so creating those that you don't feel they're clear enough, or they're not publicized, or they're not handed out to an applicant, is right where you lie, and that's the same place that I think Adam is indicating that the administrator is suggesting we go, is to look at those design manual and tighten it up so it fits within the context. Now, obviously, the tug and the pull for you is the idea that some of these buildings have been retrofitted, some of these buildings are from the turn of the century, some of these buildings are more the 30s, and some are even up to the 50s, where some it's been destroyed or modified or lost along the way. Obviously, you have that difficult question when they're completely ready to fall down. How do you deal with them? That's in your purview as well. And so you're addressing the design manual gives you a guide. And if it isn't working, you aren't comfortable with it, or you feel like people are ignoring it, you got a duty to publicize it. You got a duty to hand it out, to be as aggressive as you want, to let the world know that these are the design standards we're going to look at. Ultimately, once you do that, modify the design standards, you're going to give it to the Common Council, everybody. So you're not going to create design standards that the ultimate decision maker isn't comfortable with. So you can come up with everything's got to look like the turn of the century, and you can never do any modifications. you also run into the current guidelines that exist in the manual. So cleaning up the manual is really what you want to do. And essentially, that's what you say in this proposed zoning ordinance, is you list storefront materials, transom windows. You list everything in kind of a laundry list. These all should be addressed very specifically in the design manual, if they can be. Again, you're going to be focusing your energy. Certainly politically, if you say this should be codified, this should be a mandatory zoning issue that the Common Council signs on to, you can bring it forward in a political arena. You can say, okay, we don't feel comfortable working within the confines of this ordinance, but then you shouldn't be on the body. You should just say, go on and do something else for a living. This is your marching orders, and you should read the ordinance, and it's very clear what the historic preservation should be all about. It's not changing to zoning code or adding to the zoning code. It's tightening up what you're using to make your decision. That you followed the guideline. The guideline's already been reviewed by the Common Council. Then say to the Common Council, what are you guys doing? You know, if you feel strongly that you looked at that manual, you're going to have a better argument. So it's the design manual, which is, I guess, what we're getting input from the state on, is where your homework lies. And so all these things you are proposing in the zoning changes, you say, this is what we want to see in the downtown. Now, obviously, I think you got a challenge because of the varying decades that are downtown. And so it's not an easy challenge. And, getting a tighter manual. Consistent.
Yeah.
Questions?
If our manual is still just a guideline,
Yep.
we have nothing to stand on.
Well, you do.
I mean, we can go back to, and I'll just say with Ted Grant's,
Yeah.
The guideline said this, this, and this, and I'm just gonna say, he didn't go the opposite direction, but let's say he just went the opposite direction.
Right.
And there's nothing that the commission could do, because it's not like,
You certainly have a stronger political argument if the guidelines are up to date and they're very specific as to what happened to a building like his. I mean, again, one thing doesn't fit everything. There isn't one widget
No.
that fits the entire
Right.
downtown. So there's going to be discretion within the interpretation of the manual as to why that building needs to be retrofitted this way from the exterior structure. Again, it's clear in the ordinance, it's exterior structure that you deal with. You don't deal with what's happening inside the building. You're only dealing with the exterior. That's also spelled out in the ordinance, so.
And I'll just add that I think it's important too, because the guidelines are guidelines, because there are other codes that supersede, the
Building.
local ordinance, building codes, ADA compliance, there's modern materials, there's things that evolve over time that are acceptable in building that building codes reflect. So, to make guidelines law and building code could fly in the face of something that is arguably more important, or we can't get involved in because it's at a federal or state level at the city. There may be specific things that can be identified in the manual that theoretically could be built into building code, but you have to be very careful of doing that because you don't want to contradict something higher than you.
Study, that's,
so, and I'm not disagreeing, but I am. So right now, the city's building code, if you do a project without a permit, you pay double. Once you get caught, you pay double the permit. Okay, so I want to change my windows on my building. I'm not going to get a permit. I'm going to put in 3 different windows that don't fit the guidelines.
And that's a
So I just
proactive
made-
building inspector to catch it.
I just
And
paid
say,
the permit.
stop, now, you're and you put up a stop work order,
Mhm.
and you get violations cited, and you prevent them from doing any further work in that building, because they have to have a certificate of appropriateness. So that enforcement, that's not assuming people can do whatever the hell they want.
I can use that
But what if
example.
they, in John's, I'm
Example.
gonna kind of
He
speak
gets
for
away
John
with it.
here a little bit.
Yeah,
but
he gets away with it.
Okay, so he's, whoever, you do your windows, and you put in something ridiculous,
Mhm.
and you actually complete the job before he gets caught. Now what?
Well,
And that's exactly what happened.
They have
And
to
that's
follow
what
the
we've
guidelines.
done in the
Or-
past.
So
Or
we have the power to do that?
you have the power to recommend.
to recommend.
Yeah,
it.
but then it goes to the
Recommend
council.
Then it goes to
Yeah.
the
Our
council.
problem with that is that the council's overridden us on some of these issues.
Yes.
Well, I referencing.
We're
But
doing
it's an
something that
enforcement issue. It's not,
we believe we're doing something right, and then it is overwritten, and that makes us look
Yeah, like,
kind of
merciless.
yeah.
yeah, no, and that's, no, and exactly.
Yeah.
I get the challenge,
Yeah.
but again, this is your authority.
And I will just say that over the last 3 years, there have been at least 3 or 4 discussions about the design manual and how it needs to be updated and how it needs to be reviewed, right? We've applied for a grant, we spent a couple meetings with Craig here, and a previous commission was, not, I don't think this board, but we went through kind of line by line, looking at things. I really do believe that if that is updated and easier to understand, and there's a collective group of people beyond this commission as well, the downtown being involved as well, because these are the property owners and the people that are most affected by this body, right? If you can put together a cohesive, developed historic downtown design manual, bring it forward to the common council and have them approve it, and be able to pass that out and have it easily accessible, make all that, I think you do a far better job of setting yourself up for success than having a manual that everybody has been in agreement needs to be updated for the last 5 years.
Updating the manual as a recommendation or an ordinance.
It's listed in the ordinances, there's architectural design guidelines that are.
Again, you're always gonna have interpretation. I don't think you'll ever get it to where that is exactly how that building needs to look. And Joe, you bought it, if it don't look like that, get the hell out of our town. I don't think you'll ever get there.
Nope.
You'll never get there, that building, which is really your job, is to make sure that the whole downtown doesn't get plastered over and turned into,
And I'll just say, to add to, if it becomes too heavy-handed, a lot of times it does become backfired, right? Everybody just does it without coming to you, because it's too big of a pain, or they don't want to do it that way. So there's got to be that happy medium, and I think that can
That's the
come along,
challenge.
because,
Yeah.
and that's the challenge, because if you go too heavy, it may fly in the face of preservation ultimately. That very well could happen.
I mean, there's no question your job is near to impossible, okay? And you're going, under current circumstances, clearly you're gonna run into, you guys don't get it, common council, you don't get it. We looked at this, this is what we believe the design manual tells us, and that's why we told them no, okay? There's going to be a very clearly written document that then you can point to, and one that has been adopted by the common council, which I don't know if that's ever happened.
I was gonna ask if that even what we
Yeah,
work
working with
was
now,
ever
I don't know it's
accepted.
ever
Yeah.
been
Probably not.
adopted by the council.
We're working with our opinions right now,
Right.
more than anything else. And we know what we want. We know what we're looking for. And I think everybody wants it.
Yeah.
And the idea
Yeah.
of the, because I think people downtown would want it. Because we're protecting the buildings.
Right,
People don't come downtown from all over
to look at the,
to look at nothing. They spend more, if you go down there on a Saturday, it'd be doing.
that's what you're about.
But we don't want to be heavy-handed, but at the same time, you can't let everybody do what they want. So you have to, how much money do they have? How much are they willing to put into it? If we can get 0%, that's kind of been my thing all along. If they're going to improve it and go in that direction, in a proper direction, 2 years from now, maybe we can get them a little farther in that direction. But we need to saving the buildings should be our goal here. Any way we can save the buildings. So, and that's how I look at this. That's what we should be doing. That is our job here.
So with what we have, from what I can understand, we need to take a closer, definite, specific look at what we have and add to or take away from what we have, or start over.
It won't matter, though. I think our manual is pretty much spot on. I mean, there's gonna be words or sentences that we're gonna have to take out, or,
Well, that's
the use
true,
of
John, if you
wood.
believe that. If you believe the manual is spot on,
Well,
Bert, to say this is what other communities are doing, and then say to the Common Council, this is what the Historic Preservation's going to review every time they receive an application, you're going to have better success at the council level, for certain.
I worry about, we can do the work to the manual, but people change. We might have a strict preservation council right now, which I don't think we do, but say we do, and in 6 years it could be, we don't care what happens to the downtown. So without having any specific, like a specific ordinance that says you cannot take that cast iron column out.
And that,
Without
again,
having that,
certificate of appropriateness is required. And if you're suggesting the will of the people and electing the Common Council is willy-nilly, which is kind of what you're saying, and you might be right, then the process would be every council has to be required to read the design manual and sign on to so you do it every 2 years. You do it every turnover of the council.
And I don't think that that's a bad practice either.
And
I
be
really
part of
don't-
your
I really don't-
education.
Not looking at the manual and saying, what have we run into in the last 2 years that we need to put a design guideline for? Because I can tell you in the 2-3 years I've been engaged in this, garage doors, there's no design manual for that, that kind of stuff. There's been 5 or 6 things that have come to this board that has no design guideline based on it, that you have.
Certainly weren't there in the turn of the century. Garage doors
You
that
issue
are
certificates
glass
of appropriateness
open.
for,
There
with
is none.
zero guideline,
Yep.
with zero anything.
The world moves, and you're right.
So
I just came back from Palm Springs, and the concept there is to try to
was it nice?
keep it the 50s, 60s, and they've done a heck of a job somehow, because most of the houses stayed in that genre, but if you go downtown, they don't all look like
But here's the
50s,
deal.
60s.
You're in Palm Springs. People have walked down the street losing $100 bills. So, we don't have that here.
I'm not sure what that means, but the point I was making is somehow within the community,
Yeah.
they're keeping, so it's a community desire.
Right.
And they bring tourists in because they kept
Right.
it
But they're-
56. I'd encourage people to go to Palm Springs.
But they're
I just think
extremely,
it's kind of a neat place. That's, let me tell you.
that's because they're extremely rich.
Rich. It
They
helps.
can pay for
It helps.
everything.
And Sonny Bono was the mayor.
We don't want to take and have a building collapse downtown because nobody will buy it because Sonny
exactly.
Bono's not going to come buy it. Or who,
You're not going to bring the rich guy.
Well,
you're not going to have a
Yeah,
rich guy
which is-
come
which
in.
is
no,
good
you're
point.
wrong. Tom Rogers came
Well,
in his
I'm
place.
just gonna
So
say-
that's just a
and
reference.
you gotta remember,
Yeah.
Dave,
It
we're
can't happen.
talking
gonna say
only
that.
the facade.
Yes.
It's a small portion of a
I'm just
rehab.
saying, we
It's
have to
just
be
the facade.
careful because we have a lot of buildings down there that, we can't have a Tom Rogers come in every 10 years and save us.
Yeah.
I mean,
I agree.
it may not happen 10 years from now what?
Yeah, I agree. No, the value of this commission is huge. It's huge. I don't think I hope nobody gets the impression that we're trying to anyway put you out of business or tie your hands. Just the opposite. When it comes out of this commission saying no, you wanted to have a reasoned, supported basis that the council would have to stand on their ear to not support.
Yep.
And then they don't get a certificate of appropriateness. And we already touched on the fact that we have to aggressively have a building inspector watching the downtown. So we don't have the guy coming in and in the middle of the night changing the windows. And they need to, and put them back in, or they're going to have us do that. And you probably can get to a judge, because we have a municipal court, that'll say that. He literally will say that. He'll say, I'm sorry, sir, you never pulled the correct permit. You've been fined daily. I guess that's not getting your attention. Guess what? I'm entering an order that the Department of Public Works goes replaces those windows. It can happen.
At your
It
cost.
literally can happen. Our system, which is the one advantage, running to circuit court and getting a judge to understand is a whole different animal than having a judge that comes here, understands our desire to maintain the downtown, and you can be that aggressive, but you got to catch them at the front end is the best idea.
Yeah,
Catch them before
yeah.
they make the modification.
I like that.
So aggressive building inspector enforcement is part of the game.
So,
And you,
like what we started here, it would never, what we had started.
well, I'm not
never-
saying never.
Okay.
I'm not saying never. Again, that's another political path.
Mhm.
You can, as a body, say, well, we think it's the only way. I don't think it's the only way. I think you guys get it. You've got people on here that have a sense of old buildings and structures, and historically, we've always had those kind of people. Important. You are the voices. You're like the Lorax. I speak for the trees. I speak for the building. And you should be yelling every day. So there's nothing about what you're doing. It's just trying to do it this way is not going to get a council repeal of this. And if you repeal this, now you've really lost. Then we lost, because this was enacted for the very purposes that you're here for. So if you get into this tug and pull with the common council, you're not helping. Creating, we're going to take our ball and go home if you don't listen to us. Having the design manual say exactly why you denied that applicant, that's going to be the key. And convincing, and I do like, and haven't picked up on it, every 2 years. To your point, which is important, that design manual is what we want as a community. And you common council representatives better get on board. You were elected by the people. This is what the people before you wanted, and this, we've lived it. All of us in this room, youngster here, but the rest of us have lived the experience of what a renovated downtown means.
Yeah.
It means everything. And the Tom Rogers of the world aren't going to come around every 10 years. I agree with that, but they did.
They did.
They did, and it precipitated, a valuable jewel.
Yes.
Valuable. I mean, it's amazing what the downtown's become. And that partnership with downtown Main Street businesses is really the key. Whatever, I'm not trying to blow his horn, but actually, way back when, the first one ever was Chris Lindum, and he was a decent guy. But obviously, we took it to a much greater level. You remember Chris Lindum?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Chris Lindum was the first downtown Main Street.
Yeah.
Back in 1989.
Okay.
He was the first. And so,
He only must have lasted 2 years then or so.
yeah, he was a very short time.
Yeah.
Because then when I bought our building, like in 91,
Yeah,
Craig
there you
was
go.
already,
There you go.
Craig was
There you
in
go.
then.
So it's
Okay.
Chris Lindum to Craig. Is that?
Yeah.
Those are the two. certainly worked. It worked, because we certainly have something to be very proud of. So, I'm not coming here to bash this at all. I'm just saying there's a better way. Work within the ordinance and then focus on that design. Go outside of this enabling legislation, because then, you're not doing your job. You're trying to write law for the council. You can advocate for that, but I think this is a better, and there always will be.
It'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, there's always
Yeah.
a flaw.
yeah,
Yeah.
always, right. You're not gonna have.
Human nature, if you want
Yeah.
to call it.
Yeah, you're gonna get some people who,
Just, it is.
but aggressively telling them of appropriateness, working hand in glove with the building inspector, and then, being vigilant to make sure they're not doing it in the middle of the night. And then being able to say to them, here it is. This is what it's gotta look like on the outside of that building. And, you can disagree on this, and you can, deal with ADA, and, the building can't be done this way. All those things gotta be factored in, which Dave pointed out. And if you can get 80% or 60% or whatever, that's a win.
I can see the percentage.
Other questions?
Questions, anybody?
My only question is, where do we literally start?
Well,
I mean, so we do it right
So
without
I
wasting.
think, one of the next things would be to see where Joe at the state, he's reviewing the ordinance and reviewing the design guidelines, right? And so he's the one that Craig works with every time there's a project to help design out what it should look like. And he deals with preservation across the state, and it's the WEDC's Main Street, expert on historic preservation. Whether he can have the time to help, review it and say, this is, we can have a meeting, he can probably come, either participate, we can do workshops, we can do whatever the body here thinks is the appropriate process to review it. I think that's where we start, and I think it's a better start in the past, because every time we've sort of tried to do this in the past, it's kind of hit a roadblock.
So is
Yeah.
this, just for what it's worth, the ordinance says the commission shall cooperate with the State of Wisconsin Preservation Officer and the State Historic Preservation Review Board. So, written in the ordinance.
that Joe
Is he
was
part
the
of
guy that wrote the letter in opposition to Ted's changes.
Right.
So there again,
I totally, yeah.
it's, I'm not saying we follow all the rules and everything, but we went through that and we still hit the roadblock with council. Because there's no teeth to anything.
Well, that's the buy-in. That's the buy-in to the process. And right now you don't have that, because it isn't to the point where you can point to it and say, this is what we're gonna deal with.
Well, we did, if you remember, I stated things at that meeting, storefront.
And this is our design manual. This is what we as a common council want to see downtown.
And that's exactly what I'd said.
That's what he.
That's what I did.
Right, you were saying that without having the common council to buy in the front end, not in the back end. I don't know the
That's,
specifics in
yeah.
Ted's deal, but
And that's where, and I don't want to get off subject, but that's where we as members felt like we were,
ignored.
yeah,
Ignore it.
Yeah.
exactly. It happened that we get a real different council in 4 or 5 years, and then it goes even farther downhill, or it goes downhill downtown, with building.
Yeah, and
Because they might
Cer- up. We haven't moved backwards. The downtown is way nicer than it was in 1974 when I came here. So it's way better. It's a way better downtown when I was eating Greekers down at It's a completely different Brown's Restaurant, getting my $4 when I went to Ripon College to go eat dinner, instead of go to somebody's house for Christmas, which I didn't want to go to. You get $4 to go down to Brown's Restaurant. So our downtown is way better than that, obviously. And so we've done good at going up the ladder. Your point is well taken. Yes, can a common council blow it up? And that's why you have this democratic system in the United States of America, that public gets a vote. Everybody gets a vote. And then you got to deal with the consequences.
Right.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, this belongs to the common council. If the common council wants to abdicate their responsibility to deal with the downtown, so be it. That's what you're asking. You're asking to say, not to look at the future. Things change, and how we're going to deal with old buildings in the next century is going to change, and hopefully for the better. That there's easier ways to repair, there's easier ways to maintain than just letting. The biggest thing you got going here, you have the right to say, fix it. Don't let it crumble, that's in here. And you have the first voice. You're the, again, the Lorex example. You get to speak for the buildings. Doing your point, that you're saying the design manual as presently constituted should have been very clear to the common council, follow this. But Dave's point is well taken, 60, 80% is, and whether you get back to that point or not, because you don't get anybody into the building. And we've got some of those across the street that we got to deal with.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions on changing that?
The other question,
Well, the
have you
guidelines.
been in contact with, I think it's Jason Tisch, with, who's actually deals with the basic units of government for historic preservation?
I think there were a couple of years, like 2 years ago, we applied for a grant
Yeah.
with Jason to actually have like the design manual rewritten.
Is there a chance of reapplying for that? Because
I
it
think
happens every year.
We could. I just had to have to look at what.
Because I know, like, one of the reasons I've been going to the
Yeah.
conferences is to get us a little further along.
Yep.
on the
And
plans.
Pat Grahn was the one about 2 years ago that she helped prepare an application, and then
Yeah.
I submitted it to the state, and then they said we missed it by like a couple points.
Yeah.
But
Another
I
question-
think I think getting Joe's perspective on it, is a good place to start and see kind of where he has seen other communities go with it. And obviously, he's a giant advocate for historic preservation in the state, and he wrote letters and things in response to some of the previous issues here.
Because
But
I know
he-
Jason probably would also have some
Yep,
input
totally.
on that,
Yep.
on what changes we might need to do to the ordinance and update
Yeah,
it.
and I can reach out to him too.
Okay.
But Joe also is, he's very conscious too about how historic preservation comes off, right? Because it could, be full revolt against preservation and repealing of ordinances and people really, and you don't want that, right? That's devastating long-term to preservation. So I think just in talking to Joe, person to really come in and try to help, and then obviously in the ordinance, the historic preservation, state people office, they have experience too doing all of it, so. But
Okay.
Just one comment, you made the reference how to rewrite the ordinance.
No, but
Yeah,
also
just-
updates.
Just the design, the ordinance doesn't need to be changed.
Right.
I mean, if anybody wants to argue with, the ordinance is set up in such a way that it gives you the opportunity to tell people no, and here's the reasons why.
Yeah.
And so it's the design manual you want to focus on.
Yeah, but also there are some things like that have been advocated to be out of a historic district or remove its historic designation. For instance, if it gets damaged or
For
if it-
sure.
Yeah.
No,
and
and
they're like
Yeah.
they may also come and say, yeah, there's recommended changes to the ordinance. You still have to keep the ordinance intact. You can't, you can't, once you start touching things, you may touch something that triggers something else, that then it's a domino effect, and you start really looking at it and at some point, leave well enough alone, right?
Yeah,
Like,
that's kind of what I'm advocating, is that, and I'm not saying it's perfect.
Yeah.
But I just think your focus should be on the design manual and the buy-in from the common council. I think John's point's well taken. If the ultimate decider of this, which is the elected official, going down this road of making it a zoning code and then giving it to the zoning board of appeals, those aren't elected officials. You're not elected officials. Believe in democracy, and democracy is the elected officials deciding big issues like what does the downtown look like ultimately, or what is the direction the city takes regarding redevelopment. There may be something, a great idea to do something at the end of the downtown area,
Yes, yeah.
that would look different than historic structure. You're sticking yourself if you don't have this process. Again, I
An
represent the
election
common
has
council.
consequences.
Exactly, there you go, exactly.
That's
We've learned that,
pretty much
yeah. We
But-
understand that.
You guys seem to think you lost, like this
Yeah.
thing. And look at the body of work that's been done with this committee for downtown over the years. I mean, you got something to be proud of here.
Yeah.
It's, you can look at Ted's building and say, well, it's not gonna be exactly what we wanted. But it is gonna be better than what it is now. It's not, is it gonna be 9% of the people that walk down there? Yes. And that's what we gotta look at here. The best way to save those buildings, and we get 80-90% wins with this committee. We rarely, 10%, because he's not putting up a barn or anything there. It's still gonna look like a historically significant building. So your work is very well noted, and I think respected.
And I want to say that to John.
Yeah,
to Billy and-
don't take this
on the
as
people that have been
a
there.
huge loss
It's
or
huge.
somebody smacking you in the face, because you lost one, but you didn't really lose. I mean, he still made a lot of changes recommended by you guys. It would have looked way different had this not been here, and not for the better. It would have looked much worse. It looks way better. And
He did
I
better.
think
He
you
got
gotta look at
he
this.
got 5 out of 6.
Yeah. So,
I'm talking numbers.
I'm just saying, I mean.
So,
Don't look at it, this is not a loss. This was a
That's a
win.
good shooting percentage. That's
Yeah.
That's
I'm
better
just
batting
talking
average.
numbers.
I mean, in baseball, your record would be
I never made
insane
5 out of 6.
for hits. I mean, look at it this way. I mean, I think this body's looked upon as, hey, those guys know what they're doing. And I think, we don't ask for the moon down there, and you respect people's pocketbooks too. So, and look what we got down here. I mean, watch from now till Christmas. I don't even know who these people are on the street.
No.
They come here because of those buildings.
Yeah. Oh, no, the mission
So
is so important.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm glad you called me in. I just think that's misdirected where you're going. Focus on the.
Yeah, we need help,
Yeah.
there's no
Yeah.
doubt.
Yeah.
Right. We're not ashamed to say it. It hurt.
No,
Right.
no, I pray not, because you're doing good
Because
work.
we were all gonna quit.
And by that,
I mean, not really, but we said, well, what use?
What use is it?
If we can't, if nothing means anything, then where do we go?
Yep.
You gotta go in first.
Yep.
Okay.
You're batting 950, man.
Before you leave,
Yeah.
though, I have a question.
Okay.
And are we all done with the first conversation? Because then we'll go down to number 8, which is the update on one. I'm really unclear on I know Sue Leahy has sent letters to the owners and to the contractor for months.
Yeah, it's been what, 6 months?
Yeah, 6
It's been
months.
almost a year.
But don't you
How
have
does
two,
it become-
don't you have 2 years to do that? Is that,
Okay?
That's
So
the reason.
the only penalty at this point is, a stop work order, which obviously wouldn't be effective because they already did the work. When they come to project, they will have a double the permit fee. If they would have done that in, I would say, a reasonable period of time, after being notified of the work that they needed to complete there in the certificate of appropriateness, they did not do that. They have not been penalized or permitted. So the next phase would be, as Lud mentioned, citations. We could cite them, start off with a violation of doing work without a permit or violating the historic preservation code. We could I could ask Lud what ordinance or what
I'm not aware of the specifics.
Right, I know, and I don't expect an answer
brought
tonight,
into
but-
107 and a half, I don't even know.
We-
So they did,
Yeah.
they came.
They put in some windows issue in it.
Yes, they
Correct.
were round top. So the commission approved it contingent upon the round top being done. And it's been probably.
At least 6
or
months.
a
I
year.
think it was almost, I remember it was a kind of a winterish day.
And who's
Okay.
they? Who's they?
The D&D Associates.
Okay,
So,
okay.
so.
Now I started coming back.
So they
Okay.
did it without a permit. And, at this point, it would be finding the property owner.
Yeah.
Okay, and that was
Yeah.
part of my question. Who does the contractor get the fine? Does the property owner
Property
get the?
owner.
Okay.
property owner?
Failure to comply with the certificate or failure to obtain a certificate of appropriateness shall be a violation of this chapter. In addition to other penalty remedies, the city may issue a stop work order, just like we talked about, and all work shall cease on the designated property. No additional work shall be undertaken. They haven't done anything else.
Not that I
Screw up
know
the
of.
windows.
No, because they did them all.
Shall be
They did.
undertaken as long as such stop work order shall continue in effect. So it doesn't necessarily under this ordinance call out what happens next, but we can talk about it. So they did the work in violation of a certificate of appropriateness. Okay.
And without.
Now we're going to
Yeah.
fine them, and we may get as
Exactly.
aggressive as we're gonna give them notice, and somebody needs to resurrect it. When's the last time
I can check,
anybody
but it's
addressed
been- it-
for violation of building code? And we can move for the court to fine them daily if they're not gonna correct.
I think they had, what was their excuse up to this point?
They kept telling us, or Sue Leahy, and then she would tell us that they
said
were
they're-
ordering new windows and they're gonna fix them, but
Okay.
I think they're
That's
just
where it was left off, okay.
Yeah.
stalling.
So we need to revisit and make sure
Yes.
we've got,
And they could have, and couldn't get them. I mean, special ordered windows, I don't know.
Not this long.
Not
No,
that.
It would
we
be-
had asked for
we
the
know.
shop
Yeah,
draw.
that was my question, so there's really no excuse now.
None.
Right, not any
I mean, a
longer.
practical
Okay.
solution may be, okay, either we're gonna fine you or we're gonna order the windows and you pay for the windows. And if they say, well, we're not putting them in, we'll say, we're putting. Assess them for, yeah, specially
Okay.
assess them for the work. Yeah, I mean, I think there's some remedy, it's a matter of communication. Again, from Dave Lukuski to Bill Wallner, we've been blessed to have great chiefs we have with people has done 90% of the heavy lifting in this community, rather than running to court, and I've had to go to court. I've had to go to court on a number of occasions, but more often than not, we get people to comply.
Who writes the citation?
Ultimately, the police department will write the citation. The building code, the building inspector can.
Can.
Can. No,
Oh,
historically has not, but they can. So, we got to clarify that as well.
Yeah, probably should start.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, in order to do that, who has to have the proof of the violation?
We just had one today of a zoning code violation that I forwarded to the police department and said, fine under this section, including, the notice of daily citations. So there's a framework already in place for code enforcement and all those things that the police department certainly can just sort of build
Initiate.
in and initiate with.
They just
input
need
from
to be
staff.
notified,
Yeah.
and then they take.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just, we have a whole system.
And you can go to the building inspector having that power. And we're gonna have that conversation now that we have a new one coming in.
Generally, the police department is willing to do it because they're usually doing something else at the property in tandem
Right, yeah,
with
most,
it.
yeah.
That it's generally an add-on.
Well, I think it looks better when an officer
Yeah,
hands somebody
the citation.
a
That's like-
citation.
that's the
And
last
it's safer, to me,
That's the
it's
last-
safer too, I guess. I
Yeah,
don't know
no,
if it's safer for the
it's-
police department, but.
It is uncomfortable and,
Yeah.
police officers are used to doing it.
Mhm.
They just need building or zoning to write the citation because, they aren't necessarily experts in zoning or building
Exactly.
code.
Right.
So you need the affidavit
Yeah.
in support, which is what was missing in the old system. That's the affidavit.
Evidence.
Right, exactly. And that's the one that will testify in court. This is what I did, this is when I did it, this is what they didn't do, this is what the ordinance calls out for them to do. That'll be the building inspector.
Hopefully with the threat of a citation, they'll
Well, that's what you hope.
Just
And that's why I say,
do it.
in this case, I want to revisit that.
yeah, it would be
But,
nice.
yeah, we need to move forward, yeah.
Call and give
Yeah.
them a
And
heads
if we
up.
need to amend an ordinance to put in an enforcement action for violating the
Yeah.
historic preservation code, that may be something we have to do, like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's what I'm wondering,
Yeah.
because it's
Nothing's
still just, they just still broke the no building permit code.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But the windows are in, and it doesn't say our guidelines are still just guidelines.
Yeah, but they still violated the historic preservation ordinance.
Right, so it's
there's
just a
still
monetary,
violation. So.
how can we force them to,
We have a lot of authority.
okay, I'm hoping.
It's-
Believe me,
we
I'm
have the
hoping,
general-
that's why.
We have the
What
general
type of
penalty.
fine?
Yeah,
I mean,
the
We
general
have the
penalty
general
is
penalty, which,
any code violation.
any code
nothing,
violation.
and then they're just gonna pay the fine?
Well, that's what I'm
But-
worried about.
But any.
Daily is the key, and
any-
that's
Oh, there's a-
something that
it does-
circuit court
it's-
was reluctant to do. I can promise you that municipal court is more willing to do that.
It
Yeah.
literally is, it's a progressive discipline, right? It's send a letter, warning, say, please comply, give them. After that, send a reminder, be nice one more time. Say, if you got 1 week, if you don't, you get this fine. After that, they don't, you issue the citation. You then give them another week, you issue another citation. You say, if that doesn't done, you have daily citations until it's complete. They start at 50, it may go to 100, it may
Yeah.
go to 150, and then every day 150, 150, 150, 150, 150 until they do it. That's
Well-
how it,
I hope that's the way it works,
It-
yeah.
So it has to.
I-
Office, I have not been involved at 107 and a half at all.
Yeah.
I
I've
don't
had no
think someone
involvement
is
whether,
gonna take it that far.
whether
I mean,
Would
this
be
body
shocked.
told me,
But didn't they-
told
Yeah.
Sue, I never, yeah.
Didn't they say they were going to do them?
Yes, they.
Yeah.
I'm not
Right.
gonna, I think it's, if you've done enough of these, you understand that you know,
Percentage.
Yeah, percentage.
Time and percentage.
Okay. Well, you will look into that then.
yeah.
Thank you.
I'm gonna,
Bottom line.
Love your excuse.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Go
Thanks,
watch
bud.
the bugs.
Yeah.
see you later. Thank you. Appreciate
See you
it.
later.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yep,
Thank
see you
you.
guys.
Yep.
Bathroom over here.
Palm Beach.
Palm Beach. I had to go here.
I thought he looked 10.
Yeah.
Paul's great.
So the Southwest Historic District signage,
I was gonna ask Adam unless he left out.
you two guys did it,
We
right?
did 10 signs, what we're questioning is where are the other signs?
Okay.
To finish it.
We don't have the signs.
Okay.
We have the brackets, but no. I got this here from Matt. Let's see, we're done here.
We did 10.
Yeah,
Okay.
We did 10. We did up to that. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Looks like another 10. I think there's one down here that we didn't do. There was one on the corner we were supposed to do.
Well, we didn't have it, right?
Was that the different bracket or what?
No, we just didn't have the signs.
Oh, we started here.
Yep.
And okay, we
So you
did, we
need a lot of
forgot to
background.
start there. Okay,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
yeah. So we need another 1, 2, 3.
And if somebody took a picture, we stand on top of the ladder.
So we need another 12 signs.
12 signs. Need 12 signs.
And I believe I have in the right amount of brackets. I'll have to check on
I
that.
thought there was a lot of brackets.
There were quite a few in that box.
Yeah.
They're still in
Well, he
back-
should have the
They're still in
count.
the back of my car, so.
Yeah.
Snowed in.
Um,
I mean, he should have the account anyway. Somebody must have the invoice.
Yeah.
I just didn't know why the signs weren't in along with
I
it.
think
Right.
Adam knows how many signs were ordered or
Oh, yeah.
are there more signs? Do
I
they
don't
have
believe, remember last month, we had that letter from Adam, this is all the signs we have, don't know
Oh.
how many you need
I
to
believe,
begin
yeah.
with. You
Why
have.
did you get brackets?
them? And we got 10.
Why did you get brackets and not the signs?
I think
Yeah, we
there-
got the brackets, but not the signs.
I think there was just a mix-up
Obviously.
with the sign,
Okay.
yeah.
Unless they just wanted to make sure that we liked them.
Downtown.
Downtown, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, so we got their sloppy
Really?
seconds.
That makes.
Well, we need more.
That answers that then probably.
You guys were supposed to tell me when you were gonna do that. I was gonna have Roger from the Commonwealth.
Well, we
I
did on
posted it.
Sunday.
in-
We did on
And
Sunday.
since you're going to do it a second time, you can like.
Yeah, they'll,
We took pictures of each other to make us look really
next
good.
time Matt and I will get in the picture, not just you guys, and maybe
Oh,
Dave.
4 people trying to put a
Yeah,
sign
put
on.
one sign up.
Well, you know what? The poles are loose.
Also, the varying heights is
Oh,
like something we
that's-
were able to
yeah.
like literally
His-
just touch with our.
Hence, he can show you on his phone why I'm standing on the top of the
Yeah.
ladder because it was 2 foot taller than all the rest of the poles.
Yep.
I'm trying to remember which ladder. I remember I brought one of my.
But I
But
could-
I think if there was a couple, I still like. Was,
I know. It's
Yeah, I have to stretch my arm even
He
though
brought
I'm
a taller ladder, but you know, he's standing on the top of it.
Where it says "Do not stand," what's the I
He
don't.
was breaking.
It doesn't matter, OSHA doesn't.
He was breaking OSHA
Or my
rules.
favorite is like the 2-step step ladders. Is basically accordingly, if you went by that, you'd have to stand on the ground for those 2-step ladders.
Right, I know, you can. Yeah.
Adam, signs,
Yeah,
historic, are there more?
well, yeah, we got them on order.
Okay,
Oh, okay, that's what we.
How many need to have
12.
12?
but,
I'll check with Alan.
okay,
I think we did a bunch just because we knew.
Because I think we have enough brackets.
Okay.
I don't know what the
She
count
should,
was.
yeah, we.
Yeah, the box of brackets, there's.
Because we
plenty
put
of
10
them.
up. We do have 10.
Okay,
There.
you said you needed at least 12?
I would say 12, the
I
way
would
it looks
say-
right now.
Yeah.
Okay. I will,
okay. Thank you, Ron and Billy, for
And we
doing
had
that.
one good review because Bob Matthews drove by when we were doing it. And Bob talks to everybody.
Okay, yeah,
He was pretty happy about it.
good,
No, we snuck
Hopefully
it
we
in.
can-
That was early Sunday morning.
okay.
Before anybody got up and saw it. But, you know,
All right.
the police didn't come.
Well, that's the main thing. You weren't peeking in
Nobody- we
anybody's
weren't
windows or
taking
anything.
Nobody reported a steal.
Okay,
30?
did you pawn them in or?
I don't know.
They're
Just-
beyond that, some of them.
Yeah, that one was like 80 degrees off.
I needed to shim on the bottom or something to straighten it out.
I'm sure that's not on their list yet.
Reach out everyone else at this table.
You mean rotted? Yeah.
Yeah, like
A little rusty.
probably going back like 60 years, 70 years.
okay. All right, well, thanks again for doing that, and we'll check, I'll keep it for next month. So now we're back to certificate of appropriateness applications. We had none, so we're done with that. Stable discussion. I had that in my notes from last month, and I don't,
But we were just, didn't know if it had gotten cleaned up, if we needed to do
Yeah,
that.
it was,
Okay.
it really
That's-
didn't we didn't go anywhere with it, so.
Okay.
And it was, I looked at it too, and it's just nothing.
tenable, yeah.
Like like it's being saved to some extent for whatever reason. Only a handful of us care.
Somebody asked me about it the other, I think it was Sackerson asked me about what's going on with it, so I told him basically why I did. And also, would you like to completely repair it?
Yeah.
We have an indeterminate amount of money that would cost, and thus, also, you can't do anything with it.
If we could just move it to Palm Beach.
Yeah, maybe somebody down there.
Falls out of their pockets, I'm gonna have to go look at that.
Yeah. Okay, stable discussion is done.
I'm loaded to the
Now,
ground.
an unstable discussion.
Yeah,
I just put under there that some brush needs to be
Brush,
removed.
okay.
Yeah, whenever we get to it.
Yeah.
and again, in my,
Of tax credits for our region of the state. They kind of divide it, so like Dane County and all, and
Oh, sure.
one half of the state kind of goes around, and then Milwaukee, and then we're in Milwaukee's
okay,
district. But he basically has a power towards the community that, with local projects and that. And he's kind of shocked to find out how many properties we have that are actually nationally designated. And he says these had only about 3. Considering how many projects have happened in this town over the last few years, it's kind of shocking that only 3 people have come to him for tax credits, basically state and federal. For
A
doing
lot of
this.
people don't know about it, they're
Yeah.
afraid of it.
And so that's kind of one of the things is that we wanted to do a presentation in conjunction with the historical society.
yeah, okay.
Because
And-
people don't understand that you don't just get the money, it comes off your tax roll. It's a
Yeah.
different way, it's not like, you don't go there and say, oh, here's $1,000.
Yeah,
Understand?
yeah,
But
What's
it's also-
wrong with deducting off your taxes? You're still getting it.
it's still money,
It's the
yeah,
money.
yeah,
And like close to, and 40% of a project, that's like.
yeah.
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 What's this?
So it's kind of interesting to bring that up,
Yeah.
because since you all put the signs up, I've had like 1 or 2 calls from people being like, what do you mean I'm in a historic district? Does that mean I have to do something? Right? It's looked at as like a negative.
Yeah.
And my response is no, you don't have to do anything, and you're in a national, residential district or whatever, right? Or a state
Historic, yeah.
historic district. And you're eligible for tax credits, right? So if there's a desire to do more like PR and education on that, if 1 or 2 of you have information that you can either share with me or Mary, our communications person, we can begin, we can say, take a picture of, I think you might have taken a picture, Ron, of you guys putting up the signs. Maybe we can share that or do something with it to say, if you see a sign in your neighborhood, you may be a part of a historic district. If you're doing improvements on your house, here's program information to get a tax credit.
Yeah.
I think those are the things we have to begin doing to raise more
Absolutely.
awareness.
Yeah,
Because having all the historic homes down Watson and Ransom and everywhere, and only having 3
Yeah.
is pretty mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Because just about every house,
Even
those
just a
areas.
furnace or a water
Yeah.
heater.
well,
Exactly.
even roofs, and
Yeah.
you have to plan ahead for a roof.
See, I
You have
got
to-
my roof done, water heater, and boiler, and they paid for it.
Yeah.
But like, I redid my kitchen, they won't do it.
Right,
Yeah.
no, there's this certain,
But,
yes,
but any kind of outside work like that, it's very easy. I don't know why you wouldn't do
And
it.
also, the other thing is that we were having a discussion of getting things to be a little bit more strict. The one other thing is, there's a lot more strict requirements for getting the tax credits. They're just not going to give it away just.
right,
And so.
yeah, they have their
Yeah. They're very.
guidelines or
Guidelines,
whatever.
and their guidelines say, if you're not doing our guidelines, then.
You're done, yeah,
Like the roof, I had to put
Yeah.
a regular roof. I couldn't put a metal roof on
Yeah.
it. They would have not have done, which don't,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a historic house. You don't want to do that. And, you save the 20%. And same thing with the boiler. They didn't even blink on that one. They just, put a new boiler and then done. I
You
got
would have had a
that.
metal roof in the beginning,
What's that?
probably had a wood,
I
probably.
think.
What's that?
You might have had a tin roof on that, standing seam.
Hey, you know, I could have.
Yeah, I almost think so.
1857, you know,
All the barns.
I would think that originally it was a tin roof.
Ripon had a lot. That took off a
Yeah.
lot, but, yeah.
I don't know.
But if there's
So-
any information you have, if anybody
Yeah.
wants to-
Yeah,
I was
so
gonna have
basically,
Matt-
one of the things we're,
Yeah.
we're already, the historical society's in contact with the person.
Okay.
And I'm thinking it's going to be sometime late winter, early spring when we have this presentation. One thing I was thinking is that we actually know all the properties that are in these historic districts, and we were talking about this I always have to say historic preservation, historic society, to make sure I'm saying the right things at the right time. The Historic Society, we have this idea because we've been trying to get more people to kind of come and understand what we are about. We were going to like send, because we have folders on pretty much all the historic homes, and we're going to send that we have a folder on your home. One thing we could do is we can do an invite and kind of do the same thing at the same time. The one thing is the postage is going to cost. I'm wondering if that might be something that the Historic Preservation can team up with the Historical Society in getting that posted so we can send out that invite for this.
Is that, I don't think that's a problem, is it? Working with okay,
Why would it
I-
matter?
because
honestly,
it's for education.
If
It's
you're,
our money.
here's my, if you're gonna send something,
Yeah,
send additional information with it.
Yeah.
Right? About the tax credit.
Sure.
Right? Use as an opportunity to educate the people that have.
No.
was David Sackerson, it'll be Reamer. Steve Reamer.
Oh,
Steve.
okay. Maybe we should invite him to our next meeting and let him talk about that program.
Also Karen Cisco, she's right now our administrator, and she's probably the one that'll be doing more of the organization.
Okay, and Karen.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of those houses have changed ownership
Yeah.
that don't have any idea they're in a historic district.
Yeah, because we did
Cisco?
like a presentation maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Is it
Every
Cisco?
10 years is good.
Yeah.
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 Because it
And
does
is it
happen.
Cisco?
Yeah.
Cisco, okay,
Yeah.
Karen Cisco.
I think it's a Cisco with an S.
There's really not that many non-contributing.
Was this Paul guy you talked to?
Paul Paulson, I think, if I remember.
Paulson?
Yeah, let me see if I, this contact information on my phone here. At least his Facebook stuff. Paul Porter.
Porter?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he would be the one to lead the discussion on
He leads the
this?
discussion, he has a PowerPoint, and he just will
Okay.
customize it to the community.
I just want to put that in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'll be,
Who's he with?
he's with the State Historical Society.
Okay.
And he heads
Name's
up their,
familiar.
yeah, he
Familiar.
heads up their office
Okay.
for,
We brought that up one time before, because Carol Cartwright had everything down in all the districts. And that info,
I've got,
the location and the
and
houses.
it sounds like Paul Porter also has.
yeah, it's gotta be on file.
Yeah, the
With the
state,
state,
it's gotta be on
yeah.
file with the state. The state,
Mm-hmm.
and that may have been the guy I talked to.
Okay.
And he just sent me the paperwork and I sent the stuff back and,
I've already gone on the state historical website, typed in an address of mine,
Yeah.
and it comes right up the property record. One, it was listed on the National Register, State Register.
Okay.
So they have it at the state level.
Yep.
Somewhere.
Where?
Yeah.
We talked about it 2 years ago or anything.
I don't know.
They're in the basement. I don't know.
I don't think there was ever a designated area for
The archive.
agendas.
Like you say, it's already done, so it's documented.
Well, yeah, we can get some more information for next meeting.
Yeah,
Because I'll be-
I'll put it on the agenda for next meeting.
But we spent every dollar budget to do all that back in the day.
Yeah.
Steinbridge, all this
Yep.
work.
Okay, next meeting date.
The first is New Year's Day,
Oh,
that Wednesday, so we can do the second.
Well, what did we,
Wednesday,
last
or-
year we just skipped it because of I remember, we just skipped that.
yeah. If we don't get any certificate of appropriateness application, there's no reason to have a
Yeah,
January
for some
meeting.
reason, like, we'll basically have the same 5 things that we've had.
Yeah,
And with
Yeah.
the weather the way it is, he's gonna do outside construction.
Should we just schedule one for February?
Let's
then?
do February,
First
yeah.
Wednesday in February?
And if something comes up, we can call a special
Okay,
meeting.
that'd be, it'd be
Let's
February.
basically keep our schedule open for the 8th,
Yeah.
but like not necessarily schedule a meeting.
So it'd be
And to your point, you said the 8th, so it'd been January 8th.
Yeah, January 8th would be
Yeah,
the,
could be a question mark.
If we-
yeah,
Yeah,
if we do it, yeah.
question mark on that.
I think we did that last year.
if necessary.
The Gregorian calendars issues.
And then Adam will get in touch with you when the signs come in.
If I get them in, I'll contact John and
Yeah.
The weather will.
And we'll freeze our hands off.
Well, maybe this time I can help you.
we can wait
At
till
least
spring.
hold the
Oh,
ladder.
we had it down, we had to carry it.
We'll pick a warm day.
Yeah.
We parked on the wrong side of the
Those
road.
signs
Well,
until.
why not, right?
Trunk open. It's like we were vandalism. I felt rebellious.
I thought somebody would call us in.
So they saw two old guys up
Two
there.
old guys stealing
What's the harm? What's gonna happen?
Well, I'm sure someone looked at the window and said, are they stealing those? In
They
the
didn't
broad
think about
daylight?
calling the police and telling their suspicious character.
Yeah, right.
They look pretty shady out there.
I don't know, with the policemen, I think they just drive by.
Perhaps we let the dog out. And
Yeah.
I'd stay on the ladder, I'd be safe. Ron would have to run to the car.
I just take off and leave you there.
Yeah.
Leave me there.
I remember when I was doing a lot, I used to do a lot of my photographing on Blackburn there in front of Plastic Bowling Alley, and I'd have to walk into there, so I look down to make sure how far the car was. Okay, take my shot, then go back in. And so there's a few times the policeman just kind of looked a little bit, and passed by.
Is someone opening at the bowling alley? Is this a
Or
rubber-
like that Treasure Island thing that's over
Island
in
Tree, yeah.
in Kmart.
They're
I guess
going in there?
Going there.
Oh, they're not doing a bowling alley.
No.
I was told.
Yeah. I think like the equipment has long since
The
flown.
lanes
down.
probably too.
I think the lanes are still there, and I think they put some plywood over the old.
They put a dance floor on it.
Yeah.
I think they put stuff in between the lanes and just level it all out. I remember when the thrift store was in.
Yeah, that was like.
Okay, I'll take a motion
It's
to
funny, I
adjourn.
remember starting to, they're gonna open the bowling alley.
Motion by Dave, second by Ron.